right, welcome back to Mixtape Stories. Today, we're going to be talking about, what do we call it? It's like a training montage?
The montage mix.
The montage mix, the 80s montage
The
mix.
80s montage mix. It's a lost art now.
For sure.
Like, now it's just like people do it to spoof it. But
Yeah.
there was once a point in the 80s where, you know, your movie had to have a music video segment. And that pushed the soundtrack, which also pushed, like, you know, the VHS release and everything.
Yeah.
Like, everyone stood to make some money having, like, a good moment in the movie with just one song playing.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your favorite?
My favorite? Oh, that's a good question. I feel like a lot of ones I like are parodies.
Yeah, like modern ones.
Yeah, I mean, Hot Rod's is great.
Which one in Hot Rod?
The cigarette smoking in the woods. I can't even remember what it was, but I didn't even get to introduce you. This is Nerd Rock Josh.
Hi.
Nerd Rock Josh. Returning from Cover Stories, a favorite guest of Cover Stories.
Oh yeah, I loved Cover Stories.
Yeah, your episode is one of my favorites. My brother's favorite.
Really?
Yeah. So
Right.
glad to have you back. Thanks for coming on.
Dude, I was listening to this podcast and I'm like, I wonder if he would like to have me on.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
I reached out.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
You were like, do you want to do like wrestling stuff? I'm like, yes, but can we talk about the 80s? Like specifically like songs from movies? And you were like, yeah.
Yeah.
So here we are for it.
That's exactly, I mean, with this whole podcast, I want to get very, very specific. I don't want to hear just like 80s mix. I want to hear 80s montage mix. I want to, so
like from the movie,
Yeah.
why it matters,
Yeah.
and why it's part of this mix in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, I mean, the list that you have, it's definitely, I was telling you earlier before we started recording, this is very much like Kid Without Cable Saturday morning fodder.
Yeah.
Like, this is perfect for cartoons have ended. It's now noon. And you don't have anything to do because you're 7, 8 years old. Like, I'm going to watch this movie about kids in summer school.
Yeah. Dad's not watching sports.
Yeah.
So thankfully golf isn't on TV.
Yeah.
All right. What movie's on?
So, I mean, just kind of jumping into the concept of building this playlist, what were some of the things that you were considering for including a song? You gave me a few different lists.
I did. And I like had to like, I feel like I have to run through things, second guess myself, and then like run another one by you again. Like, all right, no, this is the one, you know, and like, and then it just like all like kind of clicked on me. Like, here's how this makes sense. Here's my list, and like, you know, I thought about, you know, gotta have it for the people. You know, if people gotta enjoy it. But the thing about all these songs is it's all has a positive impact to the story, to the character arc, to the character development. And it's those things in those movies that like we attached ourselves to as kids that, I can relate to that character. Oh, he's cool. I want to be like him, you know? And like, you know, Sylvester Stallone, Rocky IV, you could pick any song from that and start off the playlist, but we're actually going to exclude that. But we're still going to talk about how significant Rocky IV is.
Yeah.
Because it's nothing but montage music. Like the entire movie is like, okay, here's a little bit of story. Here's a montage. Here's a little bit of like heavy story. Here's a montage. Here's a minute of dialogue. Another montage. And then you have like a little bit more story and then the final fight and then the big conclusion, roll credits. Like Rocky IV is like a perfect movie, like without having to do much because it shows everything.
Yeah.
And it captures, it's all in a montage. Yeah. Like you don't even have to watch 1 through 3 to know like it catches you up on everything he's been through with Eye of the Tiger. And like everyone already associates that song with Rocky in the first place. So like you get the whole catch up of like, all right, he fought Creed, he lost, but then he came back and beat him. Then now he had to fight B.A. Baracus and not B.A.
The other Mr. T character.
Clubber Lang.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mr. T, I love you.
I was even gonna cry.
Yeah. Mr. T's character, Clubber Lang.
Yeah.
But like even the lyrics of Survivor's Eye of the Tiger go along with that exact storyline. So they already had like some knowledge. You know, I haven't done full research, but it seemed either they were in on the story ahead of time or like Survivor was just, you know, subconsciously was inspired by the first Rocky 3 movies, wrote Eye of the Tiger, and they're like, hey, this works. Or they wrote it for Rocky 4 knowing all the script. I don't know. But it just works so perfect with telling, like, here's the recap.
Yeah.
Here's what you missed out on. And that's your first music video of the movie.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, it that entire movie feels like a giant music video. And it can be background noise. And it can also be the thing that, like for me, Fifth Element is one of those movies, like, it's on, I'm going to watch the whole damn thing. Rocky 4 is another one of those for a lot of people. Like, and it was one of those Saturday afternoons. Like, it was always on and always inspiring us as kids to, like, kick ass.
Yeah, it's such a turning point, too. When you mentioned this about it being, like, music video after music video, I mean, this is probably the first Rocky. Rocky 3 kind of gets into this a little bit, but Rocky 4 is probably the first, like, MTV generation Rocky.
Right.
And I think with Rocky 3, Survivor's Eye of the Tiger premiered with that movie, and Sylvester Stallone was wanting to kind of make it more modernized. I mean, the original Rocky theme is amazing, and it's perfect for that type of movie. I mean, Rocky 1 was an Oscar movie, and if you get more into these sequels, and it's not diminishing quality, but it's definitely different. It's not regurgitated storyline. It's something new, but it's also for a new generation. And yeah, Rocky 4 is the epitome of that. Rocky 3 starts that, but Rocky 3 walks so Rocky 4 can run, essentially.
Yeah. And you know, you go further on that track list, you know, Burning Heart, Hearts on Fire, like 2 songs that are like back to back with, like, you know, Rocky's struggling. He's, you know, am I fighting for myself? Am I fighting to avenge Apollo? Am I fighting for my nation? Like, what am I fighting for? With a burning heart. But then after Adrian shows up in Russia, sends her love, boom, hearts on fire. And like, you also see like Ivan Drago, who's stoic as fuck. And like, he's just like, you can tell, like, even though he's a machine, he's still man, and his heart is also raging on fire in those montages too. Like, and that juxtaposition of like Stallone, or, you know, Rocky being, you know, training with nature, running up mountains, and then you've got Drago, who's just like all machine, all the technology, probably getting some HGH. Yeah. I mean, it's not cheating. It's just, you know. It's just a new method.
I think that's one of those movies that I feel really exemplifies the 80s in terms of not just the action movie, but just the blockbuster movie in general.
I think it's the best 80s movie. Like, it is the 80s wrapped up in one movie, because it's got the political commentary, it's got the music, it's got the stylization, the fantasy of the future with like the robot, you know.
Yeah. Was he fucking that robot?
Paulie, yeah. Oh, you know it. You know it. Like, as soon as the Fleshlight came out, like, and he had that shit in the 90s before, like, you know, before it became a rage in the early 2000s.
That's the one thing that I feel has like stuck in my mind. Rocky 4, I think about, like, there's 3 things. There's Ivan Drago, there's the, you know, Russia versus US, you know, propaganda, and then I think Apollo's robot, and especially Apollo's face, just seeing like, you know, what's going on here.
Like, and that's also like kind of the you know, I see symbolism of like, you know, a man who's had his up and up, the old timer who's like got money, but shit, you got a robot? Like, damn, you know, like, you really have made it. You know, it definitely had that kind of feel for me.
Yeah, I think, you know, when it comes to, like you said, this is kind of the epitome of the 80s movie montage. And in a lot of your list, the theme or the genre of movies is very different movie to movie to movie. but they do have the same type of like overarching theme of very like pump up. Even if it's a slower song, it's very like whether you're being pumped up to like watch this person train and like do this tournament, or you're watching someone like train to like do better on a test, or if you're just watching somebody like get better at dancing and fall in love, like it's still this like motivating factor.
Motivation was like a big thing in the 80s movies. Like, I don't know if it was everyone being like coked up and like green lighting literally any idea. Like, yeah, that sounds good. Do it. Here's a check. But like the movies that really resonated with me were always the ones with like, it's a gang of misfits, like coming together for a common cause. Like, that's your Major League, your Monster Squad, your Goonies. Like, any movie that's got that type of plot, like, I'm a sucker for. Like, sold. I'm going to watch. Yeah. And yeah.
Yeah, that's a great transition to the first song, which you picked was E.G. Daly's Mind Over Matter for the movie Summer School.
Yeah.
E.G. Daly is probably better known for she's Bubbles on Powerpuff Girls, right?
Buttercup.
She's Buttercup, and more famously, Tommy Pickles.
Yeah, that raspy voice. And she was also in the movie Better Off Dead with her band, and she's the performer at the school dance. Excuse me. But yeah, so Summer School. That movie is about a bunch of rejects coming together for a common goal. And that goal is to pass. Yeah. And they're such rejects that they blackmail their teacher. And like he has to kind of blackmail them. And Kirstie Alley's, the classroom next door, so he's got to, bang her. There's a student that wants to bang him, but he's like, hey. Like, thankfully, Mark Harmon was like, no.
It's 80s problematic, but not that 80s problematic.
Yeah, like, it could have been way worse. Like, Mark Harmon could have totally banged...
was it Courtney Thorne-Smith?
Yes, yeah. And you can't have a surf movie without Courtney Thorne-Smith. Yeah. Like, she was even in the Carrot Top movie, Chairman of the Board. Surf movie.
B-O-A-R-D, not B-O-R-E-D, as Norm Macdonald puts it.
So good.
Yeah, I mean, this was a movie that I watched knowing nothing about it just because it came on after cartoons, and I really, my brother and I both like fell in love with it.
My favorite characters that like I wanted to go to school because like I first saw that when I was like maybe in kindergarten, maybe before kindergarten, but I always wanted to have that Chainsaw and Dave friendship with someone. And like, they were pranksters, they were jokesters, but they like just fucking loved each other. Yeah. And like that, like I thought Chainsaw was the coolest guy ever. Like Dean Cameron, like what a badass. But I genuinely wanted to like capture like that type of friendship one day, and I have. And like I remember when they were like cramming for the test, like, we're doing what can't be done. Every time I took a test in school, that was always like playing in my head. Yeah. Like, mind over matter. I didn't always test well. Puberty got in the way, like towards the end there when it started falling apart. But, early on, I was a good test taker.
It's interesting with E.G. Daly like doing that song because Debbie Harry originally recorded it for this movie, and there's two conflicting stories I heard. Either she left the record company that was putting it out, or there was like an issue with one of her new singles that was going to coincide with. So E.G. Daly had just got on this record label. They asked her to fly out to my dog's right there. It was like, he'll be making an appearance throughout. They asked her to fly out to London and do it like on a day's notice, and she did it. And yeah, the rest is kind of history.
And they made a music video for it. Yeah. And it's got all the cast hanging out and jamming with E.G. Daly.
Yeah, it's such it's one of those, I feel like in the 90s it was more prominent where you have these cross promotion music videos, and it's fun to kind of watch it because you watch it and it could probably also be a scene from the movie in the sense that like it fits perfectly with the way it flows with the movie.
And she also kind of looked their age as well.
Yeah.
So, and I know that like, who did you say? Debbie Gibson?
Debbie Harry.
Debbie Harry.
Yeah.
Debbie Harry might have been just like a little above the looking like she could fit in. She looked more like she was in college versus she was in high school.
Yeah, even though she was like 40, she still looked like she was in college.
She looked like she was like, yeah, she's probably a senior in college.
Yeah.
I'm senior in high school? No. That's a woman.
Yeah.
Well, like E.G. Daily being so short and petite, like easily fit in with like the high schoolers and everything that she's been in. She could probably still play a high schooler.
Yeah. She's still kind of a baddie. Like I think that finding out that like especially as I grew up, I got really into voice actors. I mean, there's her, Nancy Cartwright, who passed away. Cree Summer is
Cree Summer's
she's
amazing.
a goat as far as I'm concerned.
And her singing voice is just delightful.
Yeah. But I could see like, you know, E.G. Daily fits in this realm of like she's such a like Renaissance person that when I find out she did something I didn't know, like I didn't know she was a singer before. I pictures Dottie from Pee-wee and then Tommy Pickles. Finding out that she was a singer, like, oh, this makes sense. Like, of course she's a singer. She's super talented.
I feel like the next gen of E.G. Daily was going to be Joey Lauren Adams. Petite, super young looking, same raspy voice, but not the resume that E.G. Daily has, but still a very impressive resume.
Yeah. It's funny. I didn't even, you're like pointing out things I never thought about. Like, did E.G. Daily put this like in my mind of being attracted to this type of voice?
I mean, I don't think it was them. I just think I've always been into that type of voice because like the first girl that I had a crush on had that type of rasp in her voice too. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so, I mean, it is very 80s in the sense that it's so weird because like you listen to a band like Charlie Bliss and they have a kind of similar voice. Bully sounds so much like Tommy Pickles, E.G. Daily, and it's kind of coming back. And I feel like it's something that has kind of been ingrained in us as people who grew up in that time, but also like it was so prominent in the 80s.
Like Bonnie Tyler was like, you know, queen of the raspiness in the voice. Oh God, she's so good. Which, I mean, this is actually a great transition because you've got Bonnie Tyler, who worked a lot with Jim Steinman, who did a lot, I believe it was Jim Steinman, who did a lot of work on the Scarface soundtrack.
Oh, really?
I believe so. It was either Jim Steinman or, God, what's his effing name?
Was Giorgio Moroder, I can never say his last name. He was prominent with the Scarface soundtrack, and I think there's got to be like a Kevin Bacon 6 degrees from them to each other.
Something like that. But like that they both had the same type of like Bonnie Tyler's Holding Out for a Hero, which is also a great montage song we'll get to later. But it's also not part of this mix. Bonnie Tyler's Holding Out for a Hero has the same like driving force as Scarface. What's the guy's name that does that one?
Paul Engemann.
Engemann. Paul Engemann.
Yeah.
So Paul Engemann, Scarface, has that same like that, just like pulsating rapid fire like synth bass, and like both guys will fuck with cannons. Yeah. Like they're not afraid to throw like cannons in their scores. Yeah. And like big blasts and sound effects and like whoosh, you know, like they're not afraid to throw those in to their compositions. Like both, I feel, are definitely like fans of Ennio Morricone, you know, the spaghetti western composer, because he would have like, everyone thinks Tom Morello is a brilliant guitar player because, he uses his input jack like a percussion instrument. He's like the first to do it. No, actually, the guitarist that Ennio Morricone had was the first to do that shit. And he did that shit in the 60s and 70s. So, enough.
I've got hot takes about Tom Morello, who I love Rage, but there's a Skillshare. It's a meme where they show him doing. You paid to do the Skillshare, and it's edited to be 5 minutes of him just doing this, and that's how you make music. With the chord. So no, that is a great transition. And Push It to the Limit is what it's better known for, but the song is called Scarface, and it's a song that it's auditory cocaine. It's very much like you're watching Tony Montana. Yeah.
Like your heart beats with it. Like, yeah. I feel like that song is on every dude's playlist in the gym. Like every gym bro, like, push it to the limit. Like, I see that. Like, I could just see that being a thing because I know way too many people with Scarface posters.
Yeah.
Or Al Pacino shrines or something. Like, that movie has inspired a lot of entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Great pause. It's something that it is the epitome of the 80s. I feel like we have another song that is like the definitive 80s montage song. I think this is up there on that Mount Rushmore.
Oh, yeah. And this one's like super positive. Push it to the limit. Yeah. Like, past the point of no return. Like, if you're going into battle, that's a good song to throw in. Like, again, that and Holding Out for a Hero are like both songs that are like, oh yeah, you're going into battle, easy. Like, yeah, we can throw this on and like step on the gas.
It's one of those things too. Like, it's so pumped up and so like high adrenaline. When you like just take the lyrics for what they are, they're fucking dumb. Like, it's like an abstract of what the limit is, and there's no like he's not talking about the limit of anything specific. It's just the limit.
The limit.
It's very much like, but
it's like Faith No More's epic. What is it? Yeah. It's it.
Yeah.
Well, what is it? It's it.
It's essentially like this has electrolytes. Like, yeah.
Welcome to the limit. Is the limit a club? Is this like a bar? What is the limit?
We talk a lot about how bands and musicians, songwriters have this sense of like wanting to be specific or wanting to be universal through being specific. This is, I think, the opposite. It's so
the most vague song.
Yeah.
Welcome to the limit.
And I think too, Giorgio Moroder like produced it. He wrote this song. Him and Peter Bellotte, they co-wrote this. And Moroder is like a legend when it comes to like 70s disco synth and things like that. So transitioning to the 80s, like I can imagine. I don't know. I don't think Paul Engemann wrote the lyrics, but I imagine they went to him with this song. And he's like, "What does this mean?" They're like, "It doesn't matter.
Just sing what's on the paper." Yeah. Welcome to the guys. That'd actually be a great skit.
Oh yeah,
that would be. Guys, welcome to the limit. Open up the limit.
Yeah.
So it is a club.
There's a really good recent SNL sketch with Lizzo, and they're recording the Black Eyed Peas, and it's basically that. Like, but Black Eyed Peas are singing, and they're like, "Oh, like you're so 2006, I'm 3006." I'm like, okay, like what does that actually mean? And but yeah, I the thing about it though is whether he was into the lyrics or not, he's selling it. Like he believes it.
And it worked so well.
Yeah.
It in the movie, like they play it a lot of times, but like the main montage of like, here's the business flow. And like, what's his limit? Yeah. Like, who's gonna stop Tony Montana?
Yeah. That's a good point too. I mean, maybe it is universal in that sense to where they maybe wrote this intending for it to be used in other movies, and it definitely has. Like, there's definitely shows, and it's more parody now.
I love that South Park like uses it regularly.
Yeah.
And then even It's Always Sunny has used it a couple times. Like
my favorite use of it recently was the Ninja Turtles cartoon that just came out. And there's like a training montage, of course, when they're like the baby turtles and Splinter's teaching them. And then it comes back when Splinter saves them from the TGRI guys. But it's just, I think it's just instrumental when he comes back. So I think that's really cool. I do want to give, I wrote this down to remember it. They used No Diggity in a fight montage in that movie that is fucking perfect.
That is one of the most insane, like, one, fight sequences, like, in animation that I've seen, like, in a long time. Like, especially for it to be, like, in the style that it was. Yeah. And then for that fight sequence to have no diggity. Yeah. Whoa.
It was just it was a cross of 4 or 5 different Venn diagrams for me.
It represented the New York style. Oh man, that's a great fight montage for a modern thing. But I mean, we're talking about the 80s here.
Yeah. I want to give it some props because like you said, it does become kind of a parody of itself. I mean, the South Park episode is about Cartman training to do the Special Olympics as somebody who is not specially abled. Yeah. But at the same time, even as a parody, like it works. Like it works in the sense that you're laughing when you hear like the sense like, oh, they're doing Push to the Limit, but then halfway in you're like, oh yeah, let's get into this.
Yeah, like, all right, I'm in.
Yeah.
Like it definitely that doo-doo, like that flute just all right, we're listening. Like it's almost like that flute is the Pavlov's bell within that song, besides just the that progression. Like, yeah, that works, but like that
I think that there is, the movie version is different than the one that was actually released because that part's not in it. It's only in the movie version. I think they might have re-released it, but when it came out in the soundtrack, that was missing and the guitar solo was missing. Yeah, it feels blasphemous to think about that. But so the release version that you would get on the soundtrack was a lot shorter. And I don't think it was the same vibe. It wasn't the same.
There's not enough good guitar solos out there anymore. That's a lost art. And man, way to bring something up that I completely like blanked upon. Like, yes, that guitar solo.
Yeah.
It shreds.
Yeah. It's such a great, like I said, that too is like another Venn diagram of different influences. And you can hear Paul Engemann kind of had like a more like rock like experience growing up, and Moroder's, of course, like disco, synth heavy. So that being like a culmination of those things, and they obviously weren't the first people to do this, but I think that's something that comes back, and it's not like synthwave by any means, but it's something within that realm of
like a lot of synthwave definitely dipped from Scarface. Yeah. Like I feel like we wouldn't have like FM85 or FM84 or Time Cop 1985 if we didn't have that song Scarface like being so ingrained of like how cool synthesizers are. Yeah. How like just driving music is fun. Yeah. You know, like even if it wasn't meant for Scarface, it was put into anything else. Like anything else. I feel like that song carries its own like torch, you know. So yeah, great song.
Yeah, and I think now that you mention it, like the short movie Kung Fury, I feel was just them listening to that song on repeat and like, this is what this sounds like. I think that there's a lot of these later movies that, like you said, they're parodies and they're satirizing, but there's also like an appreciation for it. It's never done in like just pointing and laughing. It's more like laughing together. Like we love this.
We're gonna do this because, like, although it was corny at the time, we don't think it's corny. We think it's pretty badass.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we talk about the Mount Rushmore, and I feel like the head of the Mount Rushmore is the next song, "You're the Best" by Joe Esposito for Karate Kid soundtrack. This was a song that was released in '84 with the soundtrack. It was originally written for Rocky III, and then
I don't think it could work in Rocky III.
And it's funny because there are certain lyrics that don't make sense with Karate Kid because it was written for, like, history repeats itself.
History repeats itself.
Yeah. So that was intended to be for Rocky III, and then they ended up going with Eye of the Tiger. Yeah. So this is, I think, another song that has reached the level of parody with appreciation.
Man, like, you got me really thinking about that because I didn't know that tidbit about the song. Like, I just knew it was song from Karate Kid, and like anytime someone kicks ass, you go, "You're the best."
Yeah. There's actually, this is kind of very niche for people who know Octavio. He's really good at arm wrestling.
Yeah.
And I took a video of us really drunk with one of our weightlifting friends, and he beat him. And I edited to that song. I'll show it to you later.
Dude, Octavio is a really good arm wrestler. Like, he catches you by surprise.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a matter of strength. It's like whether or not you're a good arm wrestler.
Yeah.
He's a great arm wrestler.
He embodies this song because he is just very much like Karate Kid.
He really is. But yeah, it wouldn't work for Rocky because like Rocky, like, it's not about being the best for Rocky.
Yeah.
It's about like going the distance. It's about love. It's about redemption. Like it's about all these other things. It's never about being the best.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's more personal conflict than exterior conflict.
Right.
So maybe he's like, you're your best, but that's not as catchy.
Yeah. While like with Karate Kid, like you've got this ultimate underdog, a one-man gang going up against a whole full gang of like trained dudes.
Yeah.
And I can't wait for you to like watch the latest episodes of Cobra Kai.
Oh yeah.
You're gonna fucking love it.
I'm excited. That's another
so
show.
good.
I mean, their theme song's very much in this realm of like synths and pump up.
Well, so those two composers, Leo Greenberg, I think is one of them. They did not only the Cobra Kai soundtrack, like all the scoring for it, but they also did the music in the video games that have been released in the Cobra Kai Miyagi verse. And video game music should not go that hard, but it does.
Yeah.
Like those guys fucking kick ass. Like they deserve like all kinds of flowers for what they do. And they're definitely inspired by literally every song that we've put on so far on this playlist.
No, absolutely. I think that it's interesting. I want to do a video game music episode one of these days.
Man, I could. Where do you start and where do you begin with that one, man?
It's one of those things where
I could go by console. I could go by like type of game, like platformer, puzzle game. Like there's video game music is so important. And it in itself is like the montage. Making the time go by with the song.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things too where I feel that video game music is kind of, people will say it's evolved, but I mean, you've got like Miyamoto doing like these symphonies with the Nintendo games, and because they're in 8-bit, you don't hear the full depth of those songs. But then you've also got this kind of like synthwave type of Battletoads and like Streets of Rage,
God,
and
yes.
it makes me realize how similar those are. I mean, synth orchestra is a very interesting concept in that you hear 30 different layers, just like an orchestra with a lot of these songs.
A lot of it is also inspired by Japanese jazz.
Oh, okay.
Like bands like T-Square and Cassiopeia. Like those two bands have like inspired so much video game music. It's like not even funny. And like you could listen to their whole catalogs and be like, I've played this melody before, or something like it. Like it's one of those where you're like, oh yeah, there it is.
Yeah. It's with this song for the movie, it services it so amazingly because it is a montage, but it also feels like you're watching the movie sped up, but you're catching all the important parts. I mean, it's literally what's happening.
Yeah. It's if you were to fast forward playing Street Fighter to get to the end.
Yeah. And, it's you're watching the entire first part of the tournament and you are seeing these storylines happen. You're seeing characters who you've never met before or that you've briefly met, and you're seeing like an arc. Like you've got the one guy not from either of the dojos who's like killing it. And you see him kind of going up. You see Johnny kind of not worrying about him, but kind of like planning out with what's his face,
Kreese.
With Kreese, yeah. And you're watching this. You're watching Daniel kind of learn the rules. He didn't know the rules when he got there.
What I find incredible now that we just mentioned that, the history repeats itself line. Watching Cobra Kai, it's nothing but history repeating itself. Like, what if you're the best, lyrically helped like push forward the mythos of the Miyagi-verse.
I can see that.
Like, I mean, what was it supposed to have sequels in the first place?
That's a good point. And I feel like what they've done, especially in the earlier seasons of Cobra Kai, is they've been able, because at that time, was it 2018 is when I think the first season came out or so. That time it was very like, it's South Park talks about the member berries, like everything was nostalgia based, and it was because people of our generation or slightly older were just like, hey, remember the 80s? Like, let's bring that back. And some of it was done with substance, some of it wasn't. I think what Cobra Kai does is they do it with a lot of substance. There is an self-awareness of like the camp, but then they make it camp. It's not taking itself too seriously. I mean,
but then they also still bring relevant topics and timeless topics like bullying and like having beefs that just, you'll never settle those fucking beefs. Like, let's be real, you're a drama queen, you know? like they bring that aspect that's like, yeah, I know people like that. Like, I very much know people like that.
And I think they did such a good job in being able to contemporize this without it losing its essence. I mean, there's aspects of it. It's fun to watch. I think that what's his name? Zabka is so good.
He turned a one-dimensional character into this multi-dimensional comedy genius.
Yeah.
Like, he's so unintentionally funny. And like his just dumbass catchphrases like "send it to the internet," brilliant. And like I mean, you're wearing a Cobra Kai shirt right now, and like, yeah, like Cobra Kai, Karate Kid. That's one of those eternal things. You're the best. Yeah, it kind of is.
Yeah,
it's outlasting a lot of stuff and like really like bringing in a whole new like following. And it's not just, oh, another Karate Kid movie. Oh, Mr. Miyagi. Yeah. Like, you know, it's none of that anymore. It's like, no, Cobra Kai is badass. Yeah. Like, it's about to end, but like, it's so badass.
It's one of those things. It's not like driven by nostalgia, but there is enough nostalgia in there to keep the people who want the nostalgia. And it's not like I'm still a fan of a lot of Marvel Universe stuff, but some stuff it just feels like, okay, like this person's just here for like, hey, look at him, you know, or look at her, you know. Yeah. And I appreciate that they're doing a good job with kind of flowing through. And like, I mean, the redemption of oh my God, what's his name from part 2? Chosen.
Oh yeah.
Like,
dude, his arc has been so fascinating.
Yeah.
And then like you've got all these other B characters that are actually like also strong A characters, you know, like Kenny and I forget the girl's name, the dark hair, the Asian girl that joins them. Oh yeah, Kim. No, it can't be Kim. That's just too generic. But knowing them, it probably is. I forget her name, but like seeing their arcs like come to fruition and like, holy shit, like they've actually like they're showing like a whole bunch of characters where everyone actually matters. Yeah. Instead of like, oh yeah, wave high because you're on screen. No, you actually had something really important to do with the story and the plot. Yeah. And why things are the way they are, even if it felt like something insignificant. Every little detail matters. And oh man, I can't wait for you to watch. Like you're gonna be like, holy shit.
But I love that essence of like, I mean, there's parts where they're like making fun of quote unquote woke culture while also embracing it. Yeah. And it's just, that's I think the perfect way to kind of have these things compete with
Reservation Dogs did a lot of the same thing. Man.
One of my favorite shows in the last 5 years. And yeah, it's such a perfect show.
And Cobra Kai also like has that element where, you know, you're getting a bunch of dudes who would never ever consider therapy to actually maybe consider going to get some therapy. It's actually pretty good for you, fellas. Sorry, I had to do that for the camera. Yeah.
We're looking for gifts to come in, reaction gifts.
Go to therapy.
This is kind of in touch with getting macho guys getting in touch with their more sensitive sides. This kind of takes us to the next song of Hungry Eyes by Eric Carmen for Dirty Dancing.
So I chose this one because I love my mom, and Dirty Dancing was one of our favorite movies that we'd watch together. Because it was on our VHS tape that had Dirty Dancing and then a copy of Top Gun after it. So if I wanted to watch Top Gun, I'd have to watch Dirty Dancing because I wasn't going to fast forward through it and possibly damage the tape.
Yeah.
So I watched Dirty Dancing a lot. And the whole like learning to dance and like wanting to improve, and especially when that song comes on, because it takes place in the 50s, or like early 60s, but I think the 50s, and before women had like rights, and it's a coming of age story about a girl who stands up to her father and like forces him to actually do the right thing, and like that takes so much balls, especially when women were basically second-class citizens at the time. So like for this modern song with like modern recording and drums and stuff to come on during this montage, this movie was released in the 80s, so that actually like kept it with the times of like, this wasn't released back then. It looks like it was released back then because the costumes are so good and the set design is brilliant, but we're actually in the 80s and look how far we've come. It was kind of like what those modern tracks did for the movie, because if you just had everything from the 50s and 60s good time oldies, I don't think it would have come across of like, look how far we've come, like as a society. Like
it's I think you hit the nail on the head. It's a contemporary piece that is also a period piece, and I think we saw this kind of a lot in the 70s and 80s. I mean, you see like, I didn't know American Graffiti was from the 70s until I was in like high school. I thought it was like, that's a 50s movie because it's about the 50s. And this movie too, I will say this is a blind spot for me because I know all the like parts of this. This is like, I didn't see Godfather for the first time until a few years ago. Oh, wow. I've never seen Dirty Dancing, but I feel like I know the movie like top to bottom because of its place in pop culture.
And like the dancing is like almost the dancing is the therapy part.
Yeah.
And like when she's like learning to dance in those montages, she's not doing it just to be like near Patrick Swayze. I mean, let's face it, we'd all want to be near Patrick Swayze. Every single one of us, even you. So she's trying to be better so that she can help, because all she wants to do is help. And like that's something like our generation of like older millennials, like we're the helper generation. Like we grew up on the Mr. Rogers, we grew up on PBS and Nickelodeon's Big Help. We give a shit. We got our empathy pretty early on. And Dirty Dancing is one of those that even older people could get on board on the we should be more helpful and less, stingy.
Yeah, and I think this song kind of really captures that in the sense that it's like the Karate Kid, like you see this arc over the span of these like 2-3 minutes, and you see this, like you're seeing her fall more and more. You're seeing them fall in love with each other. Yeah. And you're also seeing her get better at dancing through the process.
And she's, it's her blossoming, as becoming a true strong woman. Yeah. Like you're watching the wings of a butterfly, come out of the cocoon, and that song, Hungry Eyes, even though it's like, being seductive and stuff, like, the movie's got a lot of that teenage sex drive of the 50s and 60s that was super repressed and suppressed. And then like, young girl stumbles upon this underground, like all the employees are grinding each other. Like they're not having sex, but it's almost like they're having sex, and like she wants to get in on that. Like, hell yeah, this is what the cool kids are doing. yeah, I want in, you know, and then she like not only learns to dance dirty, but she also like fucking learns how to be a fucking badass like dancer all around.
Yeah.
Does the competitions and stuff and like does pretty well. And it's one of those movies that like I think should be mandatory. like Rocky 4 and Dirty Dancing should be mandatory viewing for like any person that wants to be an American.
Yeah, it is one of the. It is a definitive '80s movie, and it's a movie that
I can't believe it was originally supposed to be straight to VHS.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was supposed to be straight to VHS, and they spent like the majority of the budget on licensing the soundtrack.
Oh, yeah, I think the first song, "Be My Baby" by the Ronettes, who we talked about this before. I have a hot take that they are the core foundation of rock and roll as we know it. But that's for another podcast. But that cost $75,000, and then the whole budget was $4 million.
Yeah.
So yeah, and
all the other songs though that they licensed also cost a pretty good chunk too.
I was reading that,
and then Patrick Swayze was like, "I got a song."
Yeah, exactly.
And they're like, "Yeah, you want to hear it?" I mean, sure, it's on. We'll just throw it on there, Patrick. You're so gorgeous.
Anything you say.
Anything you say. Those dreamy eyes.
And that actually went. That single went pretty far for him.
Dude,
yeah.
that song
it was like a number 3 single.
That song goes hard. Like she's like the wind.
Yeah.
Like I didn't even know it was Patrick Swayze until like way later on.
Yeah.
Because like the Dirty Dancing soundtrack was one of the first CDs that we had in our household. No. Like it was a cocktail soundtrack, Dirty Dancing soundtrack, and the Ninja Turtles movie soundtrack.
Part 1 or 2?
1.
Okay, no ninja rap on that one.
No, that movie hadn't come out yet.
Yeah.
This is what we do.
Oh yeah. Skeet Ulrich and what's his face? Sam Rockwell. We're the Foot Gang.
Yeah, yeah. Call this right here a family? Whoops. Commits murder. So, the Dirty Dancing soundtrack, like, I never looked at the track listing. It was just one of those, like, oh, well, here's the music from Dirty Dancing. We're just going to put it on. Like, I like all these songs, so I'll just put it on. It's good music.
Yeah.
And then, she's like the wind. I'm like, yeah. And then, like, I think I was driving in the car one day with my mom, and we're listening to that to a tape dub of it because we didn't even have a CD player in the car. And that song comes on, and I'm like singing along with it. And my mom's like, "Oh, you're singing along with Patrick Swayze." I'm like, I mean, he's in the movie. He's not the guy singing this. And she's like, "No, he's the one singing this." I'm like, "No way. What a badass."
As if he couldn't be any more perfect.
I know. Like, if I could bring back anyone, I would definitely bring back Patrick Swayze for a couple days.
I will say that he, like, I think about, this is a complete tangent, but Tu Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything opened me up to like drag culture as a kid.
Right.
To where it felt like, it's so weird because that movie feels like it did so well in the 90s, and I feel if people released it now, it would be lambasted and like burned by a certain sect of people.
Right. And like that's another one of those that should also be mandatory.
Oh yeah.
Because it's so good, and it's about just various people's struggles and like the willingness to do what it takes to survive and to come out on top.
Yeah.
And again, Squad of Misfits.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm gonna love it.
You mentioned that, and you made me realize that's definitely one of my favorite themes of movies.
And I mean, it's a theme for like just us as a community that we need to come together because we're all misfits. Every single one of us, viewers at home. Every single one of us is a misfit, and we just need to rally behind a genuine good cause and make it so. Because if I've learned anything from these 80s movies is that we're unstoppable.
Billie Jean is another song to movie montage. I don't know if it's even a montage, but that song, I don't even remember. Is it Pat Benatar who does that song?
From The Legend of Billie Jean? Fuck, what's that song? Oh my God.
Or is it Invincible?
Invincible, yeah. I have family connection to that movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the scene in The Legend of Billie Jean, because it takes place in Corpus Christi.
Yeah, that's right.
So when they're at the miniature golf course hiding out, that property used to be like my grandpa and uncle sold that property. They were selling it to the city, but in between they got like a fat check from that production company to use it. So because they were gonna demolish it anyway to build the state aquarium, but they were like, yeah, we're gonna lease it real quick and like fuck it all up and like make it all disheveled and like it's gonna be for a scene or two. And my family was like, yeah, we'll take that money.
That's awesome. That's also I'm a big Simpsons fan. That's the young Yardley Smith. And I remember being really confused watching it in the 90s because she looks a lot like the Lemonade Girl from All That. Katrina.
Oh, yeah.
Johnson, I think.
Yeah.
And I had the biggest crush on her as a kid. So I'm thinking, like, how old is she? Like, she's in this 80s movie. Like, no, that's Yardley Smith. That's Lisa Simpson right there.
And Yardley Smith is also in, she's at, like, the very beginning and the very tail end of 3 O'Clock High.
Okay.
Have you ever seen that movie?
I don't think so.
Oh, that's like one of those 80s movies that like I wish they showed more because it's about picking a fight at school and like doing everything you can to get out of that fight at school.
Oh, cool.
And then actually getting into that fight at the end of the schoolyard. And it's so hilarious. And I highly recommend you check that one out.
Yeah, for sure.
Soundtrack, they don't really have much of one. There's not really any montage because it's like real time of like start of school to 3 o'clock, you know, and but yeah, definitely a really fun one.
Cool. Yeah, I'll check it out. I mean, like I said, like this movie, Dirty Dancing, is a blind spot, so I've got like a running list of stuff to check out.
Dirty Dancing is in my like top movies of all time. Like like for a timepiece, it's fucking amazing. Like, what a fantasy for a lot of women, like, especially my mom. I think she loved it because she always wanted to stand up to her father, you know, who was kind of overbearing. So, like, you know, that kind of, like, pumps people up, you know, the way that Hungry Eyes can pump someone up to, like, dance or get a little bit freaky later, you know, or try and seduce somebody.
Yeah, that album, I mean, the movie, I was reading or was listening to a podcast. This podcast is called Surely You Can't Be Serious, and they talk about 80s movies. And they mentioned that the writer of the movie, Eleanor Borstein, made a mixtape of songs from this era. And that was like her inspiration for like while writing. And she pitched it with this mixtape. But this movie is a mixtape, essentially. Yeah. And the fact that they were able to kind of combine these older songs.
And new.
Yeah. And this new song still had, like, you could tell, I mean, Hungry Eyes was a remake of the original writer, Frankie Prevetti and John DeNicola, wrote it in 1984. And they rewrote it for the movie and asked Eric Carmen to do it. Eric Carmen, most well known for the song All By Myself. Which is also a great song for a movie. It's great in Clueless. Yeah. I don't know if it's his version or if it's a different version, but yeah, they redid it, and you hear this song, and it's an anomaly. Like if I didn't know it was from the 80s already, I would think this could have been a 60s or 50s song too.
Yeah, like the only thing that gives it away for me is the synth bell. Like, had it been toned down to sound more xylophony, like or you know, glockenspiel, like, then it would have been like, oh, like this is like a timeless piece. But because it was a synth bell, that little bit just made it like, all right, we're in the modern era still. Like, hey, reality check.
Yeah.
Life ain't like this anymore. Yeah. You can stand up to your father.
I think that works in so many levels too. I mean, the fact that they I don't know if that's even necessarily was intentional, but it definitely gives that vibe.
Yeah.
So this kind of doesn't lead into, this is not a great transition, but I want to get into the last song on your list, which is Rockin' Till You Drop by Michael Sembello for Monster Squad.
Oh, yeah.
Another Saturday morning.
What kid movie did not want to be Rudy from the Monster Squad?
Rudy, I think, is the prototype for Rufio and Hook. I feel like
just a badass, not a care in the world, rebel without a cause. joins the club to fucking check out dude's sister get a good view because he's a pervert. But yeah, monsters are tight, you know?
He's also like the most prepared of all of them.
Yeah, he's making fucking bullets in shop class. Like, fuck bringing a gun to school. He's just making ammo in shop class. What kind of ammo? Silver bullets. You gonna fight a werewolf or something? Yeah. Carry on. You know? But like that song comes on and it's like one of the only songs in the movie that's like not part of like the score. And it's like it's like their whole preparation montage. You got, you know, the Dave, you know, organizing everyone, drawing up the map of like, all right, we got to get the amulet, we got to do this, we got to do this, and then we fight Dracula. Yeah. And like, we're going to need weapons to stop vampires. So like, Rudy's making all the weapons because he's the oldest kid.
Yeah.
He's going to be the most responsible to make silver bullets, carve a bunch of stakes, you know, and, you know, Horace is just trying to be Horace. He's not even really too much into the club, but he's there for muscle just in case. And then, you know, Phoebe's already befriended Frankenstein. She's already befriended the enemy, discovered that like, oh, he's actually not an enemy. He's actually pretty cool. Yeah. And then you've got Eugene doing the most adorable shit, right into the army in crayon and getting his dog to lick the envelope shut. And like sends a letter to the army, help, army guys, there's monsters. And they show up. Yeah. They fucking show up. Like, we got your letter, Eugene. Like, fuck, Fred Decker, you're so fucking good for that one. Like that's how it should. That's how society should work. Yeah. Like if it's written in crayon, way more priority.
It's so solid, and it's a movie that I grew up on the Goonies, and then when I found out this movie existed, like 12 years after it came out, I had no idea it was a thing. Watched it. I think this was something that was a little bit later, and like my dad was like, "Oh yeah, Monster Squad. I think you would like this." I'm like, "Why didn't you tell me about this movie sooner?"
I feel like my mom used to tell me that back in the 60s, you were either a mod and you liked the Beatles, or you were a rocker and you liked the Stones. Well, she couldn't decide. She liked both because both are badass. And so my mom was a mod rocker or a rocker mod. And so my generation, like my classroom, it was you were either Team Goonies or you were Team Monster Squad. And although I love both, I'm Team Monster Squad. Yeah. Like through and through, like those kids were way more badass. Like they weren't trying to get into trouble. They were trying to save the world. Yeah. Well, like the Goonies, they're just trying to like follow a treasure map and like, yeah, they're trying to save their town. That's cool and all, but like your shit's getting gentrified, dude. Like you can't really stop corporate interest like that. This is Dracula. You can stop Dracula.
Yeah. It's I think the kids from Monster Squad were what Mouth thought he was. Like it's his idealized personality.
Like Mouth was in the wrong movie. Yeah. Like Mouth should have moved in where the kids were for Monster Squad. Like, oh yeah, I come from a place called the Goonies near Astoria, but wait, you guys fought Dracula? Oh, shit.
That was also a movie that I think that was one of the first movies I remember quoting that like my friends didn't know about. My brother would walk around saying, whenever we'd like play guns or whatever, like my name is Horace and like cock a shotgun or Wolfman has nards, you know, like it's something that was ingrained in us and none of my friends had ever heard of it.
Yeah. You know? Kick him in the nards. Yeah. Like saying that. Like that, it's almost like the Ric Flair in a crowded theater. You do kick him in the nards. What fan doesn't have nards? Like if you don't get that, then like you're in the wrong place.
Yeah, that's up there with get him a body bag. Yeah. You know, I think that this movie is it's so synonymous with my childhood in retrospect. Because this is when I started getting... I don't even know if I can call this niche. I mean, I know it didn't do well in the box office, but it's a cult classic.
I just recently watched a documentary called Wolfman's Got Nerds.
Yeah.
And, like, I don't think it was a cult movie. I think it was a movie that was released at the wrong time. Yeah. But somehow is truly timeless and, like, brings all the Universal monsters from the 1920s into like a more modern approach while still making them terrifying as fuck.
Yeah.
But without like really needing to give them much backstory other than that's fucking Dracula. Yeah. How do you kill him? Sunlight or stake through the heart. Cool. Wolfman, silver bullet. That's it. Just silver bullet. And sure enough, in the movie, the only thing that stopped him was the silver bullet. They put dynamite in his fucking pants and he blew up into like a million pieces. And he fucking gets back together like pre-T-1000 and fucking like, oh, you know, like, yeah, you got to use a silver bullet. Which makes me wonder, would a Coors Light effectively kill a werewolf?
That's a great question. Also, when I can't talk about this without mentioning that's Uncle Rico, John Grease. Yeah, and that's something that I know he was in Martin. He's always gonna be Uncle Rico to like people of my generation, but he's also Wolfman in my eyes too.
Yeah, and like I was at the Alamo Drafthouse showing like back in 2004 or 5, or the very first time like they like showed it on a big screen like in forever, and like one of the Q&As was about like do you have any regrets about letting the black guy die? And like Fred Decker was like, look, yeah, that's actually the only thing I might regret about the entire movie.
Was it a Shane Black movie?
Yeah, Shane Black
he wrote
and
it,
Fred
right?
Decker, yeah.
Okay. So like he was all into the motifs of the time, but the black guy has to die.
Yeah, and like there was already like at the very beginning of the movie, I'm pretty sure like one of the pilots was a black guy, and like Dracula kills 2 like right away. You know,
it's a movie that I didn't even remember the song. I mean, it's been a while since I've seen it. Hearing it definitely came back. Michael Sembello is interesting because he wrote Maniac for Flashdance.
Yeah.
He grew as 17-year-old, he was playing with Stevie Wonder and like Donna Summer.
He's incredible.
Yeah.
Like his guitar solos, like and everything that like even like his like whatever ballads, the guitar solos that if he throws a guitar solo in there, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like
that was his like forte was guitar.
Yeah. And like I feel like Michael Sembello is like the dude of the 80s that like no one like songwriters love him, but like not enough people like give him the love. And in the 90s, it's Matthew Sweet.
Okay.
Like,
yeah.
They both have like just killer songs, fucking god tier solos that like Prince would probably be like, that's pretty good. You know, and if Prince would say that about your solo, like, you're pretty good. Yeah. I mean, Prince is going to be like, I'm going to play it better, but that was pretty good. Like, that's as good as you could get. Oh, yeah. No one's better than Prince at guitar. Nobody. And like, I feel like if Prince did even more collabs with guys like Sembello or guys like, hell, even Matthew Sweet, because they were around doing music at the same decade, like, I feel like pop music would have been like even crazier, like because of like label restraints and copyright blah and songwriting credit blah. Like I really feel like because of those stupid rules, we missed out on a lot of incredible opportunities for a lot of artists to have like made even more timeless montage tunes.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned Matthew Sweet because I feel like he is like he could have been like Adam Schlesinger in terms of like the music he was making and as being inspiration influential to so many bands.
And Adam Schlesinger is like the one of like the 2000s, the songwriter. And then the next one after that is like Ryan Adams or what's his effing name? The country singer-songwriter. I can't think of his name at the moment. It'll come to me in like 20 minutes after we're done with the podcast.
We'll edit it in.
I'll say it in like 3 weeks when I come back.
You just cover your mouth and then we'll like add it in ADR.
It's
But yeah, no, I think that's a cool way to end this playlist, this mixtape, and it's something that there's a through line where these songs are all very definitive 80s. They're still very, very different, and they really were tools for the movies that they were in. I mean, John Williams, of course, is the GOAT when it comes to like soundtracks, but they did a lot of what like John Williams did in terms of like establishing the aura of the movie, establishing what the movie is, and even in a lot of situations, like help telling that story arc.
Yeah, and I really wish that more movies would take the opportunity to work with artists to create timeless pieces like this. Because the last one that I can think of that I can associate with a movie, it's not even part of a montage. It was like a roll credits thing, and that's Nickelback. They say a hero saves us. From the Spider-Man 2?
3. I think it was. No, you're right. I think it's 2.
I think it's 2. But like that's like the last like song I can associate with the movie because like Armageddon with Aerosmith was before that.
Yeah.
But like since then I'm like really trying to think like what movie and what song like really like has like hammered it home, but besides like musicals.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too, because like when I'm thinking back, I'm naming movies, but they're all musicals. I think Sing Street is like my favorite of the last 10 years.
Hell, even Sing 2.
Yeah.
both fucking fantastic. But those are more musicals versus like this is a movie that's like driven by songs versus movies that it's all about the song.
Yeah, I think that a lot of it too is now I feel like that's being reserved for the trailer. Yeah. And there are some great trailers for some really not great movies that you watch it and you're just like, damn, let's go. Like, I wasn't interested, but now I am, or I was kind of interested. Now, like I'm there opening night, and yeah, I think that trailer making trailers has become an art. I feel like it's kind of diminishing now with AI and everything, but there was a point, and we are going to have a trailers episode. We've got somebody signed up for it. It's going to be great.
There's only one song that belongs in every trailer, and that is Delamitri's Roll to Me.
That song is so funny because
you turn any movie into a kid's movie if you just throw Delamitri's Roll to Me.
I was in
science.
I was in a 90s cover band, and we would every week we'd pitch 5 songs, and I had the bassist, amazing musician. He's really great, could sing and everything. He didn't know any names of any songs. And then we were talking about that song, and no one in the band could remember it. And I was like, yeah, that Roll With Me song. He's like, oh, yeah, Delamitri. I'm like, how the fuck do you know that? But you don't know Pixies. You don't know Third Eye Blind. For the longest time, I thought it was Sister Hazel.
I thought it was better than Ezra.
Oh, I could see that. But yeah. We try to devote some time to talk about songs that didn't make the lists for this. What are some songs that you wanted to include, or movies that you wanted to include?
The number one is Bonnie Tyler's Holding Out for a Hero, originally from Footloose. And, there's a whole bunch of Jim Steinman on that, and cannons. If you have cannons, your song's going to be fucking badass. Like, it better be explosive if you're going to have cannons, And Holding Out for a Hero, like, yeah. That's an explosive song.
Yeah.
And, it was in Footloose when they're playing chicken on the tractors. Uh-huh. But then, like, a few years later, it's in Short Circuit 2 in the big chase scene when fucking Johnny Five is chasing Oscar. And, like, Johnny Five is, like, mutilated and mangled and, like, turned himself back on and, like, rebuilt himself just enough to get revenge. Like, he doesn't care. He doesn't even care about his citizenship anymore. He got betrayed by someone that he thought was his friend. And Bonnie Tyler's Holding Out for a Hero fucking sets the tone for that chase. And like,
it's like a cheat code almost.
Yeah, absolutely. And then a decade later, Shrek 2. Is it Shrek 2 or
Shrek? Part 2,
yeah. Shrek 2, Holding Out for a Hero. Holy shit. Like, I was like, all right, this movie got me. Well done. You like, wasn't losing faith, but I wouldn't like I was going to rewatching it. Now I got something to rewatch. Yeah. You got the music video segment with Bonnie Tyler. Yeah. And like you could throw that in any episode of anything. And that's probably going to be my favorite episode of the show because you don't just like play that song and someone's just sitting there sipping coffee. Yeah. Like that's usually like the song that's like go-to for action. And like that's why I couldn't include it on the list because like yeah, that is the cheat code. Yeah. Like, the true cheat code is holding out for a hero. Yeah. Like, nothing is more hype. Nothing has more explosions. And, like, just, like, all the fucking choir and stuff. And Bonnie Tyler's also got, like, other epic songs, like, one that became Hulk Hogan's theme song at one point.
Ravishing.
Love that song. Also has explosions.
Yeah. She, I think, is the epitome of, like, the type of artist who you like when you first hear their song, it's like so over the top and it's taking itself just the right amount of serious to where it can both be funny but also like damn, like you need a cigarette after hearing it.
Yeah, like I mean, Ravishing is one of those total eclipse of the heart.
Oh yeah,
you know, like pretty much everything she's done. She even did a song that Paul Stanley of Kiss did or wrote. Hide Your Heart.
Okay.
Better hide your heart, better hold on tight. Say your prayers, 'cause there's trouble tonight. Like it's one of those storytelling songs, you know, paints a whole picture of like a gang fight. It was Paul Stanley must have been like, just watched West Side Story. Was like, that was fucking great. I'm gonna go write a song about it. You know, I'm gonna go write a song about it. and you know, Bonnie Tyler recorded it, and great fucking job. Paul Stanley's is like still pretty badass. Yeah. But like if anyone else could sing it and like give it justice and like make you feel it, Bonnie Tyler.
Yeah, I talk a lot about how Danzig does, or no, how female singers do Danzig songs best. And I feel like Bonnie Tyler does like any of that like arena rock, like anybody, like I mean Jim Steinman, his Meatloaf stuff is very like, it just translates so well to her voice.
Yes. And you know, Todd Rundgren too, of course, because like Rundgren and Steinman, like they always shredded together and did a lot of stuff with Meatloaf. But like Bonnie Tyler was like in that mix of like, hey, what you got for me? What's in your Q zone? And like Bonnie Tyler, like everything that she's done is like so like just as epic as Meatloaf. Like every album cover that she should have looked like a Molly Hatchet album cover. Same with like Meatloaf's Bad Out of Hell. Everything should have like kept that just like, oh yeah, if you want to fucking like feel something, this is the shit.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to end this because that's exactly what you get out of these songs. So thanks, man. I really appreciate you coming on, and you're gonna come back for a part 2 of this macho mix.
Yeah,
duet
in like a week or two. I'll be back.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
I'm tired.
Yeah. I mean, it's a long day.
It's been a long day.
Yeah, okay. I appreciate you coming on,
dude. Thank you for having me, man. Like, I love this podcast. I got nothing to plug other than like read some books, watch movies, and watch TV, and like start paying attention to it.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. But thanks a lot, and thanks for watching and listening to Mixtape Stories. Woo-hoo.